It's a long and narrow country, one of the smallest in Europe, a multicultural crossroads. Croatia. Hard to believe that not long ago there was a war raging here. And yet, in 1992, the fratricidal conflict claimed 13,000 Croatian lives, 2/3 of them civilians. Our journey begins way up in the northern reaches of the country, on a peninsula cast into the Adriatic like an anchor. Istria. Italy's just across the way. From north to south, from Pula to Dubrovnik, a coastline of nearly 6,000 kilometers sprinkled with thousands of islands. The Croats like to say the most beautiful pearl necklace on earth. Today, Croatia is a vacation hotspot where over 8 million tourists flock each summer. An incredible gold mine that's changing the face of the country in no time. A mad scramble to the east, as if Tito's former country, closed off from the world for ages, was trying to make up for lost time. But the forced isolation during the war kept the breathtaking natural expanses intact, along with Croatian culture, as we see in the little town of Rovinj. Built on an island for added protection, the medieval city is dominated by St. Euphemia Cathedral, with its bell tower that rises 60 meters high like a lookout post. Houses painted yellow and pink, narrow streets, a bustling fishing harbour. Everything here seems to hint of nearby Italy with its Mediterranean culture. We continue south along Istria's western coast. Just before we reach Pula, we spy a green mass out on the horizon, a unique protected site, the Brijuni Islands National Park. Renowned for their exceptional beauty, these islands also have a history. Marshal Tito spent 6 months out of the year here in his summer residence. And it was here on the main island that Tito, Nasser and Nehru signed the famous non-alignment declaration in 1956. In the heart of the Cold War, the three leaders refused to take sides, inviting the rest of the Third World to follow suit, not to align themselves with the superpowers. Today, the 14 islands and islets are a national park where hundreds of deer and other animals roam. A few kilometers from the park, on the southern tip of Istria, lies Pula, the biggest city in the region. Inhabited mainly by Italians until 1947, this former Roman colony is overflowing with ruins that chronicle 3,000 years of history. The highlight? The Grand Amphitheatre, stately and majestic. Built under the reign of Emperor Augustus, this is one of the biggest amphitheatres the Romans ever built. It could hold 20,000 spectators. Our journey continues south. We head towards the largest gulf in the Adriatic, the Kavana Gulf. Here, each island is a world unto itself. Tres is one of the biggest islands in the Gulf. Its mountainous terrain and steep slopes have kept people at arm's length throughout the ages. The result, unspoiled nature and numerous bays with crystal clear water, all spared the tourist hordes. Tres and nearby Lošinj used to be connected, but the island they formed was so long that a channel was dug at the town of Osor to separate them into two. Unlike Tres, Lošinj is a lush oasis of Mediterranean vegetation. Biodiversity is at its height here, with life forms abounding both on land and in the sea. There are even dolphins. This is the only place we find them in the Adriatic. There are about 100 here. They're endangered, and a major conservation program has been set up to protect them. The Croats are campaigning to create a protected marine zone that would encompass a good many of the islands in the Kavarna Gulf. A few nautical miles east, right next to the mainland, is the city of Rab, on an island of the same name. You spot the capital as you arrive by sea, a medieval city with elegant Venetian architecture. It boasts a gentle, fertile land. The entire western part of the island is covered in forests, vineyards, olive and almond trees. But Rab is a natural oddity. There's a radical change of scenery along the side facing the mainland where the fierce Bura wind blows. It whips up the salt and flings it against the mountains, turning this part of the island into a barren wasteland of rock. We leave Rab in the wake of a ferry that leads us to the mainland. And here we are once again on the coast, in the village of Jablanac. Jablanac, population 150, but thousands of tourists transit through here each summer. We skim along the Pleševica Mountains, the highest point along the Croatian coast, then veer first west, then south. The farther south we go, the clearer the water gets. 2 hours down, we reach Dugi Otok Island, right in the heart of a natural park. The Sakaroon beach is one of the jewels of the Croatian coast. The Caribbean, smack dab in the middle of Europe. A paradise for holidaymakers and divers who like to pretend they're the last people left on Earth. These islands are undeveloped and largely uninhabited, but nevertheless there are several marinas. A godsend for the fishermen, the only people who call these islands home. They've learned to mine these fertile waters for all they're worth by creating fisheries in the little inlets. We leave Dugi Otok and enter Croatie National Park. A scattering of islands. Situated southwest of Zadar, the Croaties consist of 140 islands and islets with a combined population of 7. On the last day of creation, God desired to crown his work and thus created the Croatie Islands out of tears, stars and breath, wrote the famous author George Bernard Shaw. The Croatie Islands are a geological oddity, the bare rounded peaks of mountains that were swallowed up in the last ice age. The islands were populated way back in prehistoric times. They used to be covered in forests of evergreen oaks, but pirates, cattle breeders and fishermen burned them down. And the sheep ate up whatever greenery was left. Even pastures are a rare sight today. Nevertheless, the tradition of transhumance, the seasonal move to summer pastures, endures. The Croaties remain a desert dotted with low stone walls. To escape the hectic pace along the coast, some people come here to rent rustic fisherman shacks and live like Robinson Crusoe for a bit. No running water or electricity. A modern-day hermitage, far from the madding crowd. We leave the Croaties to continue exploring the coast and the national park along the Krka River, which gushes from the foot of the mountains. The river empties into a lake here, and in the middle sits the islet of Vizovac. A 15th century Franciscan monastery with a famous library is nestled in a clump of trees on this tiny patch of land. But the deep waters of the Krka River aren't always this calm. A series of breathtaking waterfalls thunder over the limestone for miles. Downstream from the famous Skradinsky Falls, the river once again becomes navigable up to its source, which is how we arrive in the town of Šibenik. In the estuary, the St. Nicholas Fortress stands at the beginning of St. Anne's Channel, where it's been protecting the city since the Renaissance. Declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO, Šibenik's architecture bears witness to a rich cultural heritage. Built like an amphitheater right on the hillside, the city is entirely made out of white stone. Its buildings a blend of Gothic and Renaissance forms. A city with a strong personality. It said you can even feel the spirit of Šibenik in something other than its architecture. You just need to appreciate the great wines from the neighboring vineyards, where hard-working peasants have labored for centuries on little terraces of fertile land with their stone walls. Let's continue our journey even further south. Not far before Split, we notice some smoke. Trackers. Water bomber aircraft are coming to stock up in Trogir Bay. Today's mission, a fire raging along the slopes above the city. In Croatia, the transition to a market economy began in the late 80s, a change which has left an entire segment of the population behind. Croats have fled the islands and fields to head into town. The ancestral tradition of working the land has disappeared. Not easy to start rubbing shoulders with the West overnight. Take Split, for example, the second largest city in Croatia in terms of population. Of course, there's the palace built by the Roman Emperor Diocletian that makes up the heart of the old inner city. Today it stands proud with its harmonious old stones. But besides that, the Croatian economy is in the middle of a recovery. In Split, shipbuilding is one of the few buoyant industries. The country is involved in a vast reconstruction program. Since 1996, half of the real estate that was destroyed has been rebuilt without almost any international aid. But structural unemployment remains high. People aren't very enthusiastic about the liberal economic reforms, and there seems no end to the political and financial scandals. Not far after Split, we find Omiš, a city hidden away among the mountains. Omiš looks like the perfect movie set, hemmed in by steep hills and nestled where the Cetina River empties into the Adriatic. We could even imagine pirate ships hidden behind one of its cliffs. Actually, there used to be pirates here, constantly skirmishing for control over the region. Omiš has always been a strategic point of defense, a spot of never-ending battles between Turks, Venetians, Hungarians, and Croats. The pirates of Omiš have disappeared, but the slopes of Biokovo remain. Immense limestone cliffs, the perfect spot for rock climbing and hang gliding. Still further south, Sveti Ilja Mountain. Here, what the strip of Croatian land loses in width, it makes up for in height. Just behind this mountain chain lie the plateaus of Bosnia-Herzegovina. The only people who trudge these peaks are hikers. The island of Korčula lies across the way, like a piece of the mountain that broke free from the mainland. At the foot of these cliffs lies a town with the same name. Korčula is rumored to be the birthplace of Marco Polo. Some people consider it the most well-preserved medieval city in the Mediterranean. The city is surrounded by hills covered with dark forests of black oak, one of the island's main treasures. For centuries, shipbuilding was the mainstay of the local economy, and today a dozen ship owners are committed to keeping the tradition alive. At the tip of Korčula Island, just opposite the continent, we find the Neretva River. Its source is located nearly 1,400 meters up in the Dinaric Alps, not far from Sarajevo. Upriver, the sadly famous stone arch Mosta Bridge, which we can't seem to get out of our minds. The Neretva Delta is one of the rare marshland areas in the region, an essential agricultural area for southern Dalmatia. Just across from the Neretva Delta is the Pelješac Peninsula. Pelješac has always been famous for its high-quality vineyards, which produce renowned red and white wines. But the new economy lies here in the sea. Aquaculture and oyster farming are really on a roll. Fisheries are on the increase. Tuna, bass and sea bream thrive in the rich and fertile water. The Pelješac Peninsula also boasts one of the biggest oyster farms of the entire Adriatic. Here they grow the flat oyster, Ostrea eludis, which was decimated by disease in the rest of Europe. Marshal Tito even had his own personal stock. Further south, tucked away at the end of a wooded fjord, lies the village of Ston. Ston is particularly renowned for its salt, harvested here since the days of antiquity. But Ston's prized possession is an enormous wall, the biggest fortification in Europe. The village's 100-some houses are clustered within the medieval rampart, which was originally built to separate and protect the peninsula from the mainland. The wall encloses the entire area for about 5 kilometers. From here, we're only about 30 kilometers away from Dubrovnik. At the far southern reaches of the Croatian coast, just before the much-coveted Montenegro, we find the city of Dubrovnik, formerly Ragusa. Barely 15 years ago, bombs were raining on Dubrovnik. The Serbian artillery bombarded the city from the top of this hill. Over 2 out of 3 houses were hit by the explosions. Hundreds of people sought refuge in caves, sometimes for several months at a time. Since the end of the war, the country has enjoyed swift economic growth. Today, Dubrovnik, the focus of a major restoration program coordinated by UNESCO, is busy licking its wounds. The reconstruction reflects the dynamic attitude at work in the country today. The Croats want to put the war behind them as fast as they can. Move on. Non-stop charters arrive in the capital, packed to the hilt. Though so far the Croatian coast has managed to miraculously escape the concrete doom of other European coasts, the danger lurks. Developers have got their eye on the undeveloped areas along the coast. A battle of cement versus protected areas. A new war with an unpredictable outcome. But Croatia will always be able to count on its incredibly preserved medieval cities, despite the successive attacks of different invaders over the course of history.